Hi guys, welcome to my second video. It's Mir here. Um, Today is going to be an episode on Guinsoo's Rageblade, as I have teased before. Um, this is as per request from Flufik, a good friend of mine. We have discussed this item extensively previously, and the reason we did so was because it was brought to our attention through a video made by Expetu and a coach for Nord Esports, where they went over coach lists as well as data and how to interpret said data as well as items. And there was a brief segment on Guinsoo's Rageblade and the current form of this item. So this item has changed a lot over the years. It went from being like this really strong capstone item that converted crit into on hits to then being a hybrid penetration item to what it is today. So, for those of you who don't know the item, it's a 3000 gold marksman item, usually, but it can be bought on melee champions, of course, like Master Yi or Belveth. And it grants you 30 attack damage and 30 ability power, so it's retained its hybrid status, and then 25% attack speed. On top of this, you're getting two unique passives, which are, you know, as mentioned, very unique. The first being a bonus 30 magic damage on hit, um, which makes it an extremely strong early game item because it's a flat 30 damage, which just represents a whole lot more damage early game. When no one has resists and the health pools are way lower. And then second, we have Seething Strike, which makes this item a part of a very specific target group. So as long as you are attacking um, over the course of 12 seconds, you can stack this item and get 8% bonus attack speed 4 times up to 32%. So in total, you're going to be able to get 57% attack speed once you're at full stacks. And once you hit those max stacks, you gain a new passive, um, which is your phantom stacks. And what this does is that every couple of auto attacks, your on hits are going to be applied twice. Now, this is extremely strong with certain champions like Vayne or Kog'Maw or Kai'Sa. Why? Because they have innate passives, which are a huge part of their identity. So think Kog'Maw W, applying magic damage percent health on hit, or Vayne with her Silver Bolts, which is the same but in true damage, every 3 auto attacks, or Kai'Sa's Plasma stacks. All of these are extremely strong damaging tools, and this is basically multiplying those on hits. But it's not limited to just your champion damage, it also applies to item damage, like um, Wit's End or Blade of the Ruined King, Kraken Slayer, Terminus. These also all get multiplied, and so in people's heads, Rageblade is still this capstone multi-applicative item that you want to buy after your Rageblade, after your Blade of the Ruined King, and after your Kraken Slayer, etc. And I'm just here to spread some awareness. In some cases, that's not the best. Why? Because Rageblade is actually really strong as a first or second item. Now, to show you this, I'm first going to take a look at the website called League of Items. Here we can see the 12 most popular champions that like to buy this item. And as you can see, the first item win rate is stronger than the second item win rate. Now, uh, the percent of games where this is done is very low, but on the champions who can achieve this, it's extremely strong. Now, why is that so? Here we have Kog'Maw with an extremely strong win rate. Because Kog'Maw is inherently extremely strong early game because he gets so many stats. He has his free attack speed from his Q, his bonus range from his W, um, and of course the main part being the on hit from his W. And this is just amplifying that on hit and giving you so much attack speed. The early AD is welcome. But Kog'Maw's spells actually scale off of AP, so the AP is also really, really useful. It doesn't go to waste, unlike on other champions like, for example, Vayne. Um, and it just boosts your damage by an insane amount. Kog'Maw on Rageblade is one of the scariest champions there are. You can see this here on Lolalytics. First item Kog'Maw with Rageblade is an absolute demon, right? It's a very scary champion. We can confirm this as well by using Coachless. Um, and over here, if we head on over to Kog'Maw, in the AD carry role, first item, the win probability added, which is this statistic you can see over here, is a more in-depth statistic to view how strong an item is by comparing it, by only taking into account people who main this champion or who play this champion frequently have a certain mastery and skill level, but also the context of when it's strong, for example, versus tanks or versus physical damage. Now, why is this the case? Why can we see that this Rageblade seems to be so strong early game? The reason for this is because you get 30 magic damage on hit for free, essentially, on every auto attack. Fights last longer, people have low health pools, low resistances, so that 30 damage every auto attack is gonna be huge. Second of all, because fights last longer, you have the time to stack up your Rageblade. Third, if this is a skill item, you can control your waves and make sure that you have your Rageblade stacked before fighting, which makes a gigantic difference. And when you're fighting in these controlled areas and where you're in charge, and you have these skirmishes that last way longer in the early game, you're just getting infinite value from this item. If your champion can buy it early game, which means they need to be able to use the AD, the AP, and the attack speed, and have on hits. Now, recently, this got changed on Callista, who now has AP scalings on her as well. And the reason it's so good on her is because it allows her to just stack way more spears because they count as an on hit. They are being, whenever she gets the double on hit, she's throwing 2 spears at people, which allows her to reach her E execution threshold much faster. We have some outliers, it would seem, like Varus, where it's negative win rate. But if we just head on over to Varus and Analytics, we can see Varus is currently in D tier, 47% win rate champion, absolutely horrible. And Rageblade is actually the only item that's even close to 50%. So it's just a case of Varus being bad, but the item is still very good on Varus. For Kale, we have a bit of a different scenario. So if we head on over to Kale here and take a look, the stats show it's very good on Kale early game, right? But the problem is if we take a closer look on Coachless, it may be good early game if the game finishes early. But the problem is you're Kale. You're intending to scale. If your early game is good, that's great. But it's mostly out of your hands. You need to play a really good early game. And the problem is, I like talking about the idea of an engine, which we can see with crit. The more crit you get, the stronger you are. But to be able to reliably use that crit, you need crit chance. The same kind of goes for this Gnasher's Tooth. Sorry, basic attacks deal bonus magic damage, and it's a percentage of your magic damage. So the more magic damage you have, the better this item becomes. Early game, of course, you're barely going to have any. But as you get your Rabadons, which increases all of your ability power, and then more and more AP items, this becomes exponentially stronger. Rageblade makes you strong early, but then what happens is that you get your Rageblade, and then you still have to get a Gnasher's Tooth because it's a core item on Kale, right? Because you need attack speed, you need AP, and you need the on hit. Well, not the on hit, but you make very good use of it because you're already dealing magic damage on hit. And then you get your Gnashers late, which means you get your Rabadons even later. And Kale is a very, very simple champion. You want to get Gnasher's Rabadon as soon as humanly possible. So it's just a case of it stunting your growth. It can be good early game if you can close out the game early, but you're Kale. You don't intend to close out your game early. So yeah, to conclude, Kale is a good user, but it's just more efficient to build AP on her. Now, here we have on our second item, it's still a good item. These are core users. They regardless of what happens, this item is good on these champions. Okay, most of them. Maybe not Timo or Twisted Fate, but the rest of these champions they make good use of this item, but they just want to get it as early as possible. There are exceptions like Kaisa, who simply needs her Kraken Slayer to be able to get her Q and E evolve on Rageblade, which is a much stronger 2 item spike. She's also a mid game demon like Kog'Maw. Um, we can see this, if we look at their win rates. All of these on hit champions, their identities have changed. They're no longer scaling champions. That is a myth. People like to say Kog'Maw is a super strong late game menace. That's just not true. As we can see here, win rate versus game length. This is a very, very, very clean downward trend. We can see the same with our Varus here. And then Kaisa, which is slightly different because she's not actually that strong early game unless paired with very specific supports. Um, she has very low range, so she kind of has this assassin identity. But on this 25 to 30-minute spike, which is when she gets her triple evolve with Nashor's Tooth, 3 items, she is so strong. You cannot fight that champion. So as we continue throughout the game, however, you get outscaled. Now, who is it that's outscaling you? Well, it's the crit 80 carries, because their auto attacks simply deal more damage than yours. It's very, very simple. You don't have the time to stack your phantom hits from your Rageblade unless you are fighting in a very controlled way and you're starting from a wave. But usually your fights are going to be happening in the jungle, around objectives. You don't have the time to stack your Rageblade before you get, 3 shot by a Caitlyn. Or the Jinx with a reset who just hit your front line is all of a sudden hitting you, and you need 12 auto attacks and they need 4. It's just that simple. So you need to win in different ways with these champions, and that is what I'm trying to teach you. Is that the way to win with these champions is getting Rageblade early and fighting, because on Rageblade you are the strongest champions in the game, and you need to make advantage of it. You need to take advantage. You need to push through and really capitalize. Now, last but not least, we have some outliers, or you could, you know, think these are outliers, but this is something called survivorship bias. 90% of games finish somewhere between first and third item, but without completing third item. So technically, we're still in here. Once you reach third item, fourth item, some of these champions have extraordinarily high win rates on this Rageblade spike. But, but, what champions are we looking at? We're looking at Master Yi and Vayne. Master Yi and Vayne on 4 items are already, winning because they're late game hyperscalers that have reached the late game. And on top of that, if we go and take a look at, for example, Master Yi, what do we see here is if you take a look at 4 items, let's do that. We get our, 64% win rate, 61, 62, 64, 63, 67. All of these are higher than our Rageblade sitting at 60, you know? So it's it it's not even the best option. It's just a good option because any option is good because you're Master Yi at 4 items, which is why I like to take a look at these graphs on our beloved coach list. And if we head on over to Master Yi, not AD carry, of course, we can see that third, fourth item there are a lot of good options, but buying Rageblade is actually stunting you. Because the only reason you get to this point is because you were snowballing. Because that's the only reason you wouldn't buy a Rageblade early game, right? You're snowballing, you want to get your Kraken Slayer and then play the Ruined King because you think you're going to be stronger, and then all of a sudden you're trapped into, having to buy Rageblade because it's a core part of your identity, but you're buying it way too late. All in all, I would be very happy if this, helped some people to understand how to use websites like the ones I've showcased here. I, of course, want to give a shout out to the creators of these websites because they're extremely useful. I use them every single day. And I hope this can be used as a template for you to do your own research on your own items. And I hope that, this Rageblade story can help you to, you know, buy Rageblade a little sooner than you think you might have to, and really capitalize on your early game strengths and your mid game power spikes. Um, this was my second video. It's my first actual video where I'm talking about things. I decided to go with this approach where I, have my tabs open and I can just show you everything that's happening and walk you through it as if I were, just talking to you. Um, but there's also a world where I really, dig into the editing and do a much more streamlined, simplified version with some gameplay maybe, and have some things pop up on the screen. I plan on. I've asked access to the Riot API so that I can use those statistics myself in my own programs using Python, for example. And if you have any requests for items you want me to look at, or maybe strategies, or anything you can think of, I would be glad to take a look. This was Mir doing their first analysis on Rageblade, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a lovely Christmas and New Year.